Questions?
Bruce?
No. I never asked.
Oh, good.
Scott, how do you see the market for Bellinger playing out this week?
Really, he's the only five-tool free agent outfielder. And when you look at season 25, I'd say among all the free agent outfielders, he was the top gun of the class. He was defensively certainly a versatile viper in the outfield, playing both first base and all three outfield positions. And he was kind of offensively a middle lineup Merlin in the sense that he felt that he's providing power and production. The other thing about Belly that's kind of unique for a guy his age, under 30, that he's played in all three markets: L.A., Chicago, New York, and so really in many ways he's an urban maverick, without a doubt. So I think that when you think about what he's done in an L.A. market, he was kind of Hollywood ringing for, a championship, MVP. He was kind of a Windy City Wolfman and getting the comeback player of the year. And in New York, he was a true Iceman, cooling any thoughts that he couldn't hit behind Judge and lead the Yankees to a playoffs. So, and the other thing about Bellinger this year is that he doesn't have that the qualifying offer is that, that goose is gone. So he's really out of it. So I think that, when it comes to Bellinger, there's no question that, the teams have the need to Belly proceed.
Scott, how would you characterize how he felt about his one season?
I just think the whole dynamic suited him and suited them. It was really an ideal fit. It was really a well-made ride for everybody.
When talking to him at the end of the year, he said his experience in all three places makes him think that he can play anywhere and be successful anywhere. What are your thoughts about that?
That's kind of why I brought up he's an urban maverick. I mean, he just succeeds. He's that type of player. He's learned so much at such a young age. He's won a World Series. He's kind of done it all. So he's and the ability to play Gold Glove defense at outfield positions and at first base later on in a contract or even currently gives him a versatility that teams today really, really welcome.
Would it be impactful that the Cubs traded him last year, and that would that impact his decision of going back there?
No, I think Cody is open to, he wants to play on a winning team. That's his earliest mark.
Scott, do you fear that Bellinger's potential return to the Yankees could be tied to whether Grissom accepts the qualifying offer?
I think the Yankees are looking to improve, not subtract. And so since Grisham and Bellinger were both on the team last year, I would say that, Bellinger is kind of his placement among the outfielders is that he has now, particularly after being an MVP, he has a 3-year track record of consistency, power, and elite performance. And all of us who watch him play, the accuracy of his throws, his base running, he's really a five-tool player. We just don't find many athletes like that and then also proven in every major market.
Have the Yankees made it clear to you that bringing him back is a priority for them?
We've had discussions, and I'll let them talk about what they felt was most important.
When you look at the Bregman free agency this year, do you expect the teams that were very interested in him and made offers last year to be right back in the mix this year?
Well, I would certainly think that, like in Boston, we learned a lot about Bregman in 25, because in Boston, prior to 25, they had a lot of lineup do not holes, and certainly prior to 25, Boston has been a kind of a club that's been has Duncan well below the playoff line. So I think it was a bad roast in Beantown, and certainly, and give the owners credit in 25. They went out and spent some Starbucks to bring in a Bregman blend that led them to the playoffs. So I'm sure the Boston fans don't want this to be just a cup of coffee, and no one wants a Brexit. So
Chicago, Detroit.
I think all teams learned outside of Houston that if you want to have someone that's going to lead a championship army, there's no better general than the Brigadier.
How open is Pete Alonso to DHing if he goes back to the Mets? Is that something he would consider going back?
I think Pete, at this point in his career, he's about winning, no doubt. Had that question a lot. There's no doubt that Pete's pursuers are primed to pay the power piper. Pete picked a perfect period to play preeminently at a primary position. A playoff parched plethora will pounce to participate in the polar plunge.
Do you feel his negotiations with the Mets last year will at all color any way the negotiations this year?
The focus on Pete is that, they all talk about the fact that his durability. He's a guy that really has a nature about him where it's just his duty, no matter how he feels or what he does, to be on the field. And when you're in rooms for a couple days with teams, it's funny with all of the the elements. What they say is Pete possesses a pachydermian-like perseverance. I mean, he has a nature about him that is so. And don't get me wrong, power, production, punishing pitchers, they're fully aware of his skill, but what I think they most pay attention to is the core element of what he can do to provide a team that consistency of 40 home runs, power, and production. And because they're just not finding it. They're finding a lot of players in the market that are somewhat there and somewhat not.
What would you say about concerns about his defense as far as his range goes?
When you look at the number of first basemen that can play 100 games, you'd have to rank Pete right up there in the top 7 or 8, because there aren't many first basemen that can play first base and keep the position. They just don't want to play people there. Forgive the pun, but it's become a platoon, except for Pete.
Forgive that one.
I'm about done with my P's, I think.
Where do you expect the Scherzer area to go? How do you think? Well, more importantly, what does he want to do? Where would he like to end up?
It's Maximeni, so he's a guy that's got the genius and blessing of a ball that just continues to come out at 95, 96. And the other thing is that when you watch the playoffs and you heard that Scherzer was starting, you saw what it did to their locker room. It relaxed everybody. And they are really brought each one of those games to either a win or to the very last moment they were in a position to win. So it's the kind of thing that is what every team most wants. When it matters most, Max is there.
Do you think the threat of a lockout after next season will impact contract money or lengths this year in negotiating?
No, historically we haven't seen that because teams always want to be their best. And, you know, the bottom line is that teams understand they don't have to pay players when there's strikes. And our industry over the years of being part of it, I have never seen the momentum. I mean, the international footprint that we have now placed on baseball, I think the NFL and NBA wishes that they had such a following. And we're doing really, really well. Our media rights, our media ratings were double that of the NBA championship and the World Series, which says a lot about how we negotiate, knowing that we make half of the NBA in media rights. Something says that we ought to reconsider our methodology as to how we approach it, because the product and the flow of the game has never been better. So as far as what they do to continue that flow, I would suggest that the parties understand that the real value and rights in this game is about what media rights the league receives.
Scott, what's your read on the starting pitching market at this point? How your clients fit within that, and whether that might be the segment of the free agent market that you're sooner than others?
Well, we have a number of starting pitchers on the market. Max, we talked about. Cease is someone that you go and look at pitchers that can give you 30-plus starts 5 years in a row, and other than Dylan, they cease to exist. And and also his strikeouts. He's a 200 strikeout guy, a very rare guy in the market, and unlike the other famous Dylan, this one is exclusively electric. Okay, so as far as Gallen, you really learn after being in these rooms that the available starting pitchers is pint size. So we know that a lot of teams are going to be courting Gallen. And so it clearly, and there's not an ounce of truth to the idea that Gallen couldn't fill up a rotation. And certainly, if you if you want a pitcher, why not Gallen? So Suarez has got true 4-pitch command. I mean, he is, he's really what you'd call the zone ranger. And there's no doubt that anyone that looks at the playoffs and you look at the last 3 or 4 years, that Suarez's playoff quality is, well, frankly, he's the Lone Ranger in that category. So he's if you're interested in acquiring a postseason pitcher that has proven himself, I would suggest you don't want to miss the Suarez postseason soiree, no doubt. I think that Nick Martinez can close. He can relieve, and obviously he's a starting pitcher. So, he's got more gears than an astronomical watch. So he's a very, very valuable guy that can take this to for a team that wants that type of versatility, which I think is very important. We're going to go to a rotational dynamic where we're going to bring up young pitchers. I think in 2015 we had something in the area of 31 pitchers that threw 200 innings, and last year we had 3. So we have changed the way that we approach pitching and what we do. And the idea of it is that you're looking at maybe a new dynamic of having young starters pitch 120, 130 innings, go 4 or 5 innings, and then you've developed someone in your bullpen that twice a week can throw 40 to 50 pitches. And so to cover the way a pitching staff works, because getting 800 starting innings now out of starters it's proving to be a 6-7 man process for most teams. And as far as Imai is going to post on the 19th of November, and certainly has done everything that Yamamoto's done in the NPB, and does it with a changeup more than a splitter. So his durability is really of notice. And he's 27 years old. So when most teams talk to me about Imai, they say, "Oh my." So he's that kind of guy. I think when you watch him pitch, he leaves an indelible mark on you, kind of a Tatsuya. And so you kind of always remember what you saw and how that type of talent has converted over here and has done so well.
How could Hassan Kim's month in Atlanta affect, if at all, his negotiations with Bregman? Where they want him back, and he liked it there, it seemed like.
Well, I think Kim is a hot song on the shortstop charts, no question. I think the availability of defensive premium shortstops in this market is very, very slim. So if you're looking for a premium defensive shortstop to play, I think it's HSK, no doubt.
Do you have a sense of how much more years Max wants to pitch?
Well, I think it's just a matter of the highest level of competitiveness. I mean, when it's coming out at 95, 96, when you go into the playoff and do what he did, it's really, it's Maximilian. He's just, it's not about chronological age to him. It's about what he can do for a team, what he does in a locker room, the respect he has in the game, and what he's earned. And he is a remarkably committed performer. What it takes for him to keep the standard that he has, conditioning-wise, and what he does in the off-season, it's just a routine that he enjoys and welcomes. So I would expect that he'll pitch as long as he's competitive.
Scott, you negotiated a couple of long-term deals with players in the Rangers a few years ago. Their announced decision that payroll is going to drop this year, does that run against the spirit of what you negotiated for Marcus and Corey? And how do those players feel about the idea that club's going to scale payroll back?
You'd have to ask him that. Again, the fluctuation of payroll, and a lot of teams will tell you they're bringing in talent from below, so they are going to have a better team even though they have a lower payroll. I haven't talked to CY about it to really understand what their plan is and why. All I know is that it was very clear from these meetings that there are many teams that are ramping up. They're adding. They're not subtracting. And to be competitive, I would be very guarded about not being aware of what your competitors are doing.
The most recent.
Talks with the Tigers, do you anticipate that they'll keep Scuba instead of trading him?
All we know is that look, the fans in Detroit want the Tigers to build a Tarek Barrick. You know, they Little Caesar's running around town saying "Sai Sai," so it's the kind of thing where he's built a base. Obviously, everywhere they go, they know it's Scooble Day. They understand that organization is substantially different if he's not there, and when you're in these situations and you go through it, all we know is that we hear mostly from the fans, and the player hears from the fans, and it's kind of like it should be Scooby done, right? And if not, I think the fans would certainly think it's a Detroit doink if they don't.
Have they approached you about an extension again at this point, or is that something that
we talk a lot, and through the concourse of the off season, we'll continue to discuss. Our point of view is that we always listen. We're prepared to listen to about anything that Chris or really Scott has to say. So we'll just see how it goes.
As far as gambling in baseball, what are your concerns for your players, for the game itself? Knowing that gambling is such a big part of advertising and just a societal part of that as well.
I think for players, the concern they have is the integrity, where they don't want to be questioned. What creates question? If a player is out in the mound now and he is sitting there and he overthrows a pitch and it goes 55 feet, you wonder. So you have to create a system that does not allow for such events to be, that they can wage a bet on it. So when I read about, they can only do X, you have to remove those prop bets to make sure that the integrity, so that the players aren't questioned. Because there's going to be all forms of performance questions given now to pitchers and such when they throw certain pitches to the back of the screen or situationally, and really we don't want any part of it. We want our integrity, the players' integrity, never to be questioned.
There's been a sort of a rise along those same lines, the gambling lines. There's been a rise in players receiving death threats, their families receiving death threats. Should the teams or leagues be doing more to try and protect them?
In sport, what we do on the mental health side really needs to be ramped up, because you have to have immediacy for the families and the players so that when it occurs, they know how to immediately manage it. And they also wanted it to be done confidentially. It is one thing if it comes at the player, another thing if it's directed at his loved ones and children. And I mean, we have gotten kidnapping threats, we've gotten all forms of things. And, as a league, this is why, again, going back to a lot of the prop bets, we have to eliminate, the gaming and really do more to have governance over the gaming system so that the players are not put into the positions of people who make very, very outward, illogical maneuvering that places their life in jeopardy, which they then act emotionally and they carry out unforeseen reactions to the players when the players have no idea what has occurred in their world. So it all begins with the platforms.
Scott, back to Pete for a minute. What do you think he's the franchise's all-time home run leader now. He's popular with the fans, a franchise player. What do you think that means to him as he looks at his future and what he might do?
Pete has been a lifetime Met, and obviously when he reflects on his career, it's all he has to look to. The one thing I think Pete understands, that playing in New York is not something most can do. to become a star-level player in New York, even fewer can do it. And so I think the New York fans recognize it, and they've been very, very outward and appreciative of him. He and Haley's involvement in the community has been received so well. He's in so many ways, from a production, middle of the lineup, he's an ideal franchise player, plays every day. And it's clear that the New York fans relate to somebody who is workmanlike, who is what Pete is. When I use the term pachydermium-like, I mean he is the elephant that goes out there every day. He is impenetrable, and he really knows how to manage the pressure of that situation. So I think it's something he's very proud of because of the fact that so few have achieved that standing.
Scott, you mentioned Ime's posting, Scott. What's the situation with Okamoto right now?
Okamoto's along the same line that their respective teams have announced that they are posting the players, and it's just a matter of finalizing the date.
What are your expectations for Gerrit Cole as he comes back from this Tommy John? He's not young anymore. He's obviously a hard worker. Some guys have to reinvent themselves. What's your thoughts on how he will be?
I wouldn't be throwing around chronological age when you're in front of Gerrit Cole. Just giving you a warning. So the idea of it is that these types of Scherzers, Verlanders, Coles, they have passed the point of applying the certainly anything but a compartmental analysis, not a comprehensive analysis of durability. Gerrit just sent me film yesterday of him throwing. He is excited. He's passed the Tommy John gateway, which most successful pitchers have happened much earlier in their career. He's in great shape, and he has all weapons available, and he's a remarkably durable, true number one, and I don't think any of us see any limits on him going forward for the years to come.
You mentioned the fans' appreciation of Pete. Do you feel like the Mets front office feels the same way, appreciates him in the same way?
I've met with David and Steve, and again, they're just really, really excited about the year that Pete had. Pete, in his own, again, the guy is such a worker. He made biomechanical adjustments from 24 to 25, which proved to be highly rewarding for him. The metrics that most teams look at were grandly improved, and so he really understands how to consistently take a bat and perform, and I think that's a credit to him for all of his work in the off season to achieve that.
On the Red Sox, what is your sense of their willingness and ability or interest in spending big this offseason?
Well, I wish they came into my room and said, hey guys, not kind of how it works, but I do know that they're excited about last year. I think they see something they didn't see following 24. I think the ownership was rewarded for their investment in 25. They've got a lot of young players that have made commitments that are very advantageous to the team, and so they're in a position to be very aggressive in the free agent market because of the underpinnings of their work earlier in the year with their younger players. So I fully expect that they have a strong go sign to what they're going to do in 26.
Coming back to Bregman, do you sense that the market is significantly changed because of what he did in Boston and also the qualifying offer being taken away?
Well, the qualifying offer is just, for Bregman, it took his leadership exponential and allowed it to be available to so many other teams that would normally not pursue the category of acquisition of a free agent at the expense of one of their high draft picks. I can tell you that empirically, the numbers are never as good as they profess them to be about what draft picks mean, but There are instances where they've been highly rewarding for teams, but no question that with Cody and Pete and Bregman, much like Snell, Chapman, Correa, all that we've seen earlier, when the qualifying offer is gone with star-level players, the volume of attention literally doubles.
The Astros, have there been any extension talks about either Hunter Brown or Jeremy Pena? And is that even realistic given the way that they've approached long-term deals?
Well, certainly Hunter is, now achieved the stature of Cy Young voting. He's in a very special category of performance that is among the Cy-type pitchers. And Dana is fully aware of that, and certainly I'm sure they have a strong desire to keep him, and what I always tell them, we'll certainly listen to what they have to say.
Scott, in the wake of the Blue Jays run to the World Series, I'm wondering what kind of feedback about the opportunity playing in Toronto presents, what you're hearing from your clients, and how that might compare to years past.
I got a chance to meet Edward Rogers when he came to the Juan Soto meetings in L.A. and got a chance to hear about his history and how he built Rogers Communication and what his intentions were for the team. And I think to see him and the organization on the platform that they had this offseason gave them a feel of the reality. Certainly something I've been saying for a while, that Toronto is one of the top 4 or 5 major markets in the major leagues. And I think we'll see ownership commitment and every bit of behavior to support and advance that thought.
What can they do to perhaps market themselves a little bit better, just have the wider baseball industry understand the possibilities for that as a baseball destination?
Well, the most important thing is the player community, because that's what gives them the stage that they just were rewarded with. Is that when you become a winning club, players take notice. They have done so much with their ballpark, where we hear about how families are treated, where among all the players' wives and families, to note how that's done, it's become very much a model for other major league teams. So there's a lot of things along that lines in the player community which have drawn players to Toronto, and when you have talent, you have certainly the bright lights that go with it. So I think that everything about what they've done in the past couple of years has proven to reward them with that placement, to say that in the player community, Toronto is a winning franchise, and I would strongly consider being part of it.
As you laid it out about Dylan Cease, could he be the most underrated free agent out there this year, knowing that, as you said, people are looking for only 4 or 5 innings from their starters, dominant 4 or 5 innings, and the fact that he hasn't missed a start in 6 or 7 years?
Bruce, that's a great point, because along the lines of Alonso and along the lines of Cease and or Gallen, is that they have demonstrated durability that have separated them from the true 99% of the starters, because they can post every day. And what we're seeing is that, I had Blake Snell last year, and he had a 4-year record of innings pitched of 128, 120, 180, and 104. And to the Dodgers' credit and Andrew Friedman's credit, my point was, look at how well he performed from July 1st on. He's a trophy pitcher. He's going to pitch well for you when it matters most. And most teams didn't buy into that theory. But you know what? It was the theory that we used with Scherzer, with Ross. And it was the theory that we professed with Friedman. And for both those clubs, ironically, they ended up in the World Series. So I think there's a lot of attention to having true number one talent be available at the most important periods. And so we don't look at this anymore as a season. What we look at it as is how we potentiate our optimum talent at the right time.
With Bregman, the Tigers were close last offseason. Do you anticipate them being interested again, and what's it going to take to get it across the finish line this time?
You know, when it comes to leadership, and when I don't know of any starting position player that has been in the postseason 8 consecutive years. And so, whatever that is in the locker room, whatever that is, and granted, there's talent on both those teams, but Boston was a real test. Bregman went in there with a lot of young players, and in a situation where they were finishing not close to playoff, but they were finishing in last in their division. And he went in there and created a culture. And give credit certainly to AC and his staff and what they do, and what the front office did and the ownership commitment. But in that locker room, there is a sense of truth. There's a sense of real. And how that's done is so delicate in today's. You can lose young players. They can run away. We have players in there from many, many cultures, many languages. And when you see a player that's able to unite with all of them, it is something that, how can you not say that that is something that's extraordinary? And how can you not say that most don't have it? And how can you not say I should covet it?
Is Imai open to playing in a market like New York, and how do you think he would perform in that kind of...
Who's that?
Imai.
Oh, I think Imai is, like I said, he loves big markets, and we go through a list of the places that he may want to play, and believe me, he is someone who really wants to be on a winning team and compete at the highest level.
Scott, the Mariners said they're going to keep their payroll what they ended with this season. Does that surprise you, given that they made the LCS?
Whenever I'm asked by payrolls, I have to say that when don't you advance, and why don't you advance? And we have record revenues, record attendance. We have all of these parameters. I don't think anybody wants to announce what they're really going to do at this point. I think they want it to be a surprise. But I also have to think that in this business, like any great business, you don't move in response to a internal subjective payroll. This business, and any business in sport, is about the ebbs and flows of talent. And if the Rangers a few years ago, I sat down with CY and I said, we have 2 players that we think that if you sign these players, you are very short to a World Series. They didn't sign one. They signed both, Simeon and Seager, and they went way over budget. And they were rewarded 2 years later, with a world championship. So you've got to first and foremost look at talent. You have to first and foremost talk about what the advantages are for your team. But the word budget is a barrier to success in sport.
Are they one of those teams that you mentioned that are trying to do more?
What's that?
You said there are several teams that are trying to do more. Are they one of those teams?
Well, I think the Mariners have realized that they're very close to something really good. And obviously, while they haven't crossed the finish line, they feel they're close. They're closer to it than they ever been. So certainly that would potentiate, I think, more grand thoughts about greater acquisitions than not.
Hey, Scott, I have one more for you. Do you see any resolution to the Chris Bryant situation in Colorado, given that I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play again? He's got 3 years left.
I mean, this is a medical situation. I'm sure KV would love to play every day. Obviously, he's had a medical infirmary, and we've had him to a host of doctors, and we'll just have to see how it goes.